Welcome to the Adjunct CEO Podcast with your host, the Adjunct CEO, Dean Akers. Tips, ideas, and interviews with top leaders to help you and your business when results matter.
Well, welcome to today's episode of the Adjunct CEO Podcast, video cast also. This is our second show that we've done in video, and we're excited about the format because it allows those of you out there that are commuting and want to listen to us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, or iTunes, you have that availability. But if you want to go to YouTube or some of the other channels, you can watch the show, although we're just really narratively talking. But today I have something that has prompted me to come up with some conversations with some executives recently that were expressing their frustration with their teams. And so I started looking back in previous companies that I've had the opportunity to be the CEO of, both mine and as I've been brought in as a hired CEO. And I'm reminded of how people feel frustrated with the performance and accountability of their teams. And I hear it all the time. Dean, I'm just frustrated. The accountability of my team, the performance of my team, I can't get them motivated, on and on and on and on and on. Today I'd like to make a suggestion to you. The person you should be the most frustrated with, if that is happening to you now, the person you should be most frustrated with is yourself. Now you're probably sitting there going, what? How could I be frustrated with myself? It's those people that work for me or around me, or people that within if I'm a nonprofit or if I'm a volunteer group, they just aren't motivated. And I would suggest to you that, they are motivated. And today I want to share some things that have helped me in my career to help that phenomenon, to create empowerment and to get people accountable. And one of the biggest things I find when people are frustrated and we go back and we look at what they're doing, they're instinctively micromanaging. They're wanting to touch everything. And they're doing it, I think, out of fear that the people aren't accountable, but in reality, they're creating a whole culture of cripples. And so the question is, you got to ask yourself, are you micromanaging? And I'm going to give you some examples. One of the biggest examples that I've seen in my career, and I've sat with CEOs in a meeting and then watched their people come in and just watch them pummel the initiative of their teams. And by the way, this isn't just C-levels. This is middle management, especially with the people that work for them. So they have a plan. Everybody wants to execute something. And so they say, I want you to, let's say, design a logo. First off, if you want that, you should give them some criteria that you're interested in having. It could be colors. If you have branded colors, like your company has branding colors by Pantone codes and stuff like that, those are all parameters that are set. If not, and you want their creativity, what you want to do is you want them to give them the parameters and then have them go out and do it. Now, if they bring you back an A, B, C choice and they ask, which do you like better, that's okay to say, I like B better than C or A. If you empower them to come back with one solution, then here's a key. And I have seen this time and time again. So somebody comes back with a solution to you. It's not exactly what you would do. And when I mean exactly, you sit there. One of my best examples, one of the previous companies I had, my guy would say, okay, I want my creative people to come back. Every time they would come back, if they came back, he'd say, well, could you just change the font this way? Could you do this way? So finally one day, and he was always frustrated. He's saying, they just don't get it. I'm having to do everything. And I go, well, I watched you make changes of things that were fairly immaterial. So you've empowered your people to go do something. Then when they come back, you make these very, very subtle suggestions. Now, everybody listening today or watching is probably saying, well, isn't that what you're supposed to do? The answer's no. You want to look at it and say, is this a deal killer? If it's something that could be detrimental to your company or it's really off base, yes, deal with it. If it's something subtle, I mean, I've seen people rearrange people's letters, for God's sake. If it's not a material difference that's going to make an impact on your company, congratulations to them and say, go make it happen. Because the minute you touch it and you say, well, could you just change this formatting a little? Guess who owns it? You do. And now you've set the precedent for your people to always be coming to you for feedback. Thus, they're not accountable because you've made cripples out of them. You've made cripples out of them. So one of the other techniques is if there's something that's not a game or a deal breaker also, is learn to ask really quality open-ended questions. Now, what's the difference between open-ended and closed-ended? Open-ended questions require dialogue. So if you want to empower your team and get results out of your team, you want to ask them open-ended questions. An example is if somebody's in there, you say, can you explain to me why you think this is going to work and the thought processes you have that go into this to make this product do this or this ad to do this or this report to do this. And then shut up. And shut up means don't say a word. They'll start sharing with you what they think. Listen all the way through. What you're going to find is most of the times as you start creating this empowered, accountable phenomena, they're going to really do well thought out projects, and there's going to be minimal things you may want to change, but don't change them. Let them continue to own it. Let them continue to own it. If there's something you want to change that might be a little bit of direction, you could say, how do we reach this client? And they go, well, we may want to do something a little different. You go, well, what would you do? And they go, we ought to do this. Coincidentally enough, a lot of times it's your idea. So it's pretty comical because at the end of the day, it ends up being exactly what you wanted. So that's the other thing. The other thing, when you start setting out for accountability, I got to show you, the people that are watching today will see it. Those that aren't will hear it and they can picture it. I started this about, I don't know, I'm going to say 30 years ago. We would have guys that would be late for meetings and stuff, and everybody always had an excuse. So we as a group bought a deck of cards, and they're blank cards. An example of one of them would be this card right here. Well, that has a joker on it. But they would be like a blank card. And we get a blank card, and when we have a blank card, we simply write something on the back of it. And so it's blank, and everybody writes their 5 favorite excuses. So here's one. Used it in the rig or what, something, broke something. The point is, this excuse is about as good as the one they're going to give anyway. So then we put it in here. It's a blank card. We got all these cards in the shoe. We shuffle them up. Then when somebody has an excuse, we go, here's our excuse box. We have it at all our meetings. We have it at all our events. And what happens, anybody can call it. They can call it on me. They can call it on each other. But if somebody starts whimpering out an excuse, we simply pull one of these out, and it's left it at SG's Deli. Now, it's kind of a laugh, but this excuse is about as good as the one they were going to come up with. I mean, one of my favorite things was when people were late to meetings back when I had my tire company, and they would go, well, you know, the traffic was bad. And I would sit there and I'd go, so how long have you lived in Tampa, Florida? And they go, well, I was born here. I said, so did traffic get bad today, or is it bad on our interstate every day? And they would say, well, it's bad every day. And I said, so you're late because the traffic's bad? Well, yeah. Well, no, you're late because you're late, because you know the traffic's bad, so you didn't put a contingency in there. Draw one of these excuses out. Bingo. Here comes one. Draw one out. Putin uses it to rig the election. I don't know who came up with that in our team, but so it's always comical, and it's just about as good as the one you're going to have. So get yourself an excuse box. Get some blank cards. Get your people used to coming up with solutions and not excuses. not excuses. And lastly, I'd like to share something that a thoroughbred horse owner shared with me years ago when I was in my 20s. And this was another leadership thing for empowerment and stuff. And what it was, thoroughbred horses love to run. And he took me out on his thoroughbred farm and said, I'm going to teach you a leadership tip, Dean. And I go, okay, what is it? He goes, in your company, you want people that win and run. I go, of course we do. Who doesn't? He said, but most companies treat their thoroughbreds like old nags horses. And I go, what are you talking about? So he put me in his truck and he took me out to his thoroughbred farm. And he showed me the difference between a regular horse pasture and a thoroughbred horse pasture. Thoroughbreds love to run, and they freak out if they're caged in. So here's this pasture, 10, 15, 20 acres, I don't know what it was, with fence lines, and at every perpendicular point in the fence, there was a subtle curve. And I go, what's that for? He said, well, our horses love to run. This allows them to run. This allows them to run that fence line. They come to that sort of subtle curve, and they run, keep on running. They never realize they're fenced in. I went, oh my God, that's so cool. He goes, exactly. So when you're developing your company and you're developing your skills as a leader, you want to make sure that you put curved fence lines at the perpendiculars. So your thoroughbreds are always running, never feel fenced in. However, you always have them fenced in. So it's a subtle technique that when you learn to ask those open-ended questions, you learn to take the excuses out of your company, you learn to empower your people to take their ideas, and if they're good, use them, don't touch them, and you'll create an accountable organization that you can grow to great levels of success. So I hope everybody's enjoying our video cast. I really appreciate with the thousands of downloads. By the way, we're in over 42 countries now we've been listened to. Again, if you have questions, I appreciate everybody that emails me with help@theadjunctceo.com, help@theadjunctceo.com. I've helped some people this week for free. I built PV lists for them, business plans, business models. I'm here to help you. So if you need help or you have a question on any of the shows, feel free to email me at help@adjunctceo.com and I'll get back with you. And there's absolutely no charge. I want to make sure we're helping you. So until we meet again, have a great week.
Enjoyed today's show. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. If you have any questions or need some help, just email help@adjunctceo.com. Thanks for tuning in.